Good morning everyone, and we are back for another painting tutorial, and I hope everybody's doing alright from home. We've got a beautiful sunny hot day today. I think it's about 26 degrees in London, so yeah, beautiful day. So I prepared a lesson today that I find is really useful for everyone, and it's basically painting techniques, different painting techniques that that they're very universal. So these ones really apply to most types of paint, so to acrylic, to oil paint, tempera, and you can adapt some of them to gouache and also to watercolors, although watercolors have a whole range of different techniques that I'm not going to be covering today. So this is basically how to do certain techniques and also how to apply them to achieve certain effects. Okay, so I prepared some bases, but it doesn't really matter. It's just for the purpose of the video. You don't really need to do them. So I'm gonna jump straight in, and the first one that we're going to be doing is called stippling, and we're going to do it in 3 different tones and a highlight more likely. I might be jumping from one to the other just to allow paint to dry, so you're gonna have to bear with me, yeah? So stippling is a very common painting technique, and for stippling you need a brush that is a little bit ugly. You want it with all of them, oh, how do you call them? All of the bristles sticking out a little bit. You don't want a brand new brush. You don't want a soft brush. You want one that is really bristly and that you'd say, oh, I'm ready to chuck that brush away, yeah? And if it's a little bit fat, it's even better. So stippling is great for doing the leaves of a tree at a distance, fields of grass at a distance. It's also really good for flowers, and the technique you can adapt to many different things. So the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to grab the darkest tone of green that I've got, and I'm going to literally stab it everywhere to have as much coverage as I can on my paper. So I'm going to start pretty fat. So as you can see, I'm covering quite a lot. All I'm doing is I'm stabbing it. I'm not adding any water to my paint. I'm doing paint straight from my palette onto the surface. And I'm going to put a little bit less pressure at the ends just to get a little bit of an effect going into the distance. Yeah, just for you to see a variation on the technique. Okay, so I'm gonna leave this base to dry. I'm painting on acrylic, which it dries very quickly, so I'm just gonna leave that base to dry, and I'm going to do my base one for the flowers. That is the same technique but doing flowers. So I'm going to be using a similar brush that I'm gonna have to clean. Hold on, let me see my pot. Okay, so for the flowers, I am thinking about a bunch of hydrangeas, and I'm gonna apply the stipple in a kind of group. And I'm also starting with the darkest color. So always remember, when you're painting with acrylic, also with tempera, you're always starting from the darkest color to the lightest. If you're painting in oil, in watercolor, and in gouache, you're doing the other way around. You're starting from your light, moving on to the dark. Okay, so I'm gonna leave that there. So now this is not completely dry, but I'm gonna go with my second layer. So for my second layer, oh, I'm making a mess already. my second layer, I'm going with a brush that is similar to that one. Yeah, and I'm going with a mid-green. And I don't want to cover completely what I've done. Yeah, but I just want to leave a little bit so there's not too much difference in value. It's just a little bit lighter. It's not going to show too much, but I'm already achieving a little bit of depth. Yeah. And to achieve depth, remember, the first layer has to be super dark. Otherwise, it's going to look very flat. If I would do too much of this mid-green, it would also flatten it. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And while I'm leaving that layer to dry, I'm going back to the purple one for my flowers. So second layer, I'm doing the same thing. This is a really nice technique for flowers. And I'm not covering completely my darkest. Just leaving a little bit of dark and then enhancing it with a bit of a lighter one. Again, no water in my paintbrush. I want my paint to be thick. Okay, I'm gonna leave that there. And I'm gonna go back to my green. So for my green now, I'm gonna go with light green. And this is where the magic starts to happen. So I'm going to be quite mild in my application of the green. So I'm gonna put it heavier here at the bottom and I'm gonna put it lighter at the top. And see, if I want to do it at a distance, I can make the mark making super tiny at the top, just by barely touching. And if I make my mark making heavier, it will look like it's more concentrated. And there is a little bit more refined. So that is my stipple technique for trees at a distance, bushes at a distance, fields at a distance, stippling. Yeah. So if you want, what you can do, we're gonna give it a highlight in a minute, but I'm gonna leave it for now. And I'm gonna go back to my hydrangeas. So I'm gonna go with a light purple now. And it's usually on the lighter layer that it really comes out. So as you can see, I don't want to cover completely my dark. I don't want to cover my mid either. I just want to enhance them. If you are painting flowers or anything, it's always better if you have a photo reference. I haven't got one with me at the moment, but if you guys are doing this from home, if you use a photo reference, you'll come up with something a lot better, more realistic and better observed. Yeah. So I'm gonna leave this one here and I'm gonna come for my highlight with the greens and I'm gonna go straight up with some lemon yellow. Yeah, lemon yellow. And a highlight. Got mixed up with a bit of white, I'm afraid, but hey, it'll be alright. And I mix a different yellow, a bit of cadmium as well. And see how that's optically mixing there in the palette, on the surface. Sorry, not in the palette, on the surface. And you can give different shapes to things by rounding it up. So the important thing, always remember, never cover your darks completely so you don't lose depth, yeah? So I'm gonna leave this experiment over here. Now, if you're working from home, try to stick around and stay quite a long time while you're experimenting, because really wonderful things happen while you're experimenting. And if you rush your experiments, you won't get as much learning out of it. So I'm just going to give it a bit of highlight here, but not too much. With highlights, I tend to be quite minimal. If you overdo highlights, it really looks overdone. So when you're doing your lighter tones, you just want to do a little bit here and there. Like I tell my students always, less is more. Okay. So that's my stipple for flowers, petals for hydrangeas. Of course, it doesn't look like a hydrangea because I'm just doing a sample, but yours will. Okay, so we got the stippling done. Next, we're gonna do glazing, and glazing is a beautiful technique. I really love it. So what glazing does, glazing is, let's try to explain it. It's the building up of very thin layers, and this is done for different reasons. You can use glazes for changing a color. You can also do it to add transparent layers. Yeah, you can use it to darken, you can use it to lighten without altering the color that you've got underneath. Okay, so I know it's kind of confusing because there's so many different things that you can do with glazing. It's really worth having a little bit of a read, but I'm just going to show you a couple. Yeah, so the first one, I'm going to use a soft brush. So for glazing, it's better if you got a soft bristle brush. Normally I would use a big brush, but because my sample sheet is quite small, I'm just going to use a small one. So I've done a base layer of yellow so that I can put a different color on the top to create a different color, just to show you how that works. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is that to my yellow, I'm just going to add on, let me get a palette. So what you want to do, you have your base color, whatever it is, and then whatever color you want to put on top, you need to add a tiny bit of pigment in a swimming pool of water. Okay, so I'm adding paint that is very super mega watered down. Can you see how watered down that is? So now I'm going to start applying it evenly. And just watch how my yellow becomes a green. Yeah, so that's using glazes to change a color, and that you're gonna do it with two primaries that makes a secondary color. Okay, so I'm gonna leave that to dry, but if you want it to be greener, what you can do is that you can leave that to dry and then continue to glaze once the first layer is dry. Yeah, so let's see what happens if I add on a green that is already pre-mixed. So with glazing, you have to be patient, yeah, because you have to allow the layers to dry. Okay, so that's by adding green. And what I also want to show you is what happens when you add the complementary. So see there, it's starting to dry, and you can see the beautiful texture from the paper underneath and from the paint. And glazes are really beautiful and very effective in doing that, in basically picking up textures from the paper and the surface, bringing out beautiful surface, yeah, that otherwise perhaps you might not be able to notice. So here I've got a little bit of purple, and I'm adding purple because purple and yellow are complementaries. And I want to show you what happens when you add a complementary color in the form of a glaze. So, yeah. So basically what it does when you add a complementary is that it darkens the color. Yeah. And then I'm gonna add on red, just to show you what happens with a similar color of a similar family. And I'm gonna put it on that way just to see how it starts to alter everything else. Beautiful. Okay, so I'm gonna leave this here, but what I want to let you know is that it's very important when you're glazing to have your layers, let them always dry completely. I've kind of rushed it because I'm doing a quick video, but what you want to do is that you want to set up loads of different base colors and then apply in different parts of paper, and then apply glazes, let them dry, and then come back to them once they're dry. And if you're working in separate pieces at the same time, you can work without getting bored and without having to wait. Yeah. So now we're going to move on to a two-tone blend. And then I'm gonna cut off and do another video for you so it's not too long. Yeah. So two-tone blend. I think I've already got some greens here, so I might use greens. So you need a soft brush, and when you're doing a two-tone blend, you want to be applying the paint quite flat. With a flat brush is better, and a big flat brush is better. Yeah. So I'm applying the paint there. So I've got my dark color. And then I'm gonna clean my brush and I'm gonna apply the light color underneath. This you normally do for the sky. You can also do it as a base for the sea. Obviously not with these colors. And then what I'm gonna do now, I'm going to wet again my top one, because blending only happens when the paint is wet. If the paint is dry, it doesn't happen. And then very, very quickly, so basically this is quite hard to do. It looks very simple, but it's not too easy. You have to apply very, very little pressure and have very quick wrist movement. And then you get a nice blend between two colors. Yeah, or two tones. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave it here for this video, and I am going to continue in a different video. All right, so you get a part 1 and a part 2. I hope you are enjoying learning about these painting techniques. Take care. Bye.